10-Minute Murder contains depictions of actual crimes. What you are about to hear is real and violent in nature. Discretion is advised. This is 10-Minute Murder.
Welcome to 10-Minute Murder, the brief and bingeable true crime podcast. My name is Joe. I'm the host, and thank you for being here. If you are new to the podcast, first of all, thanks for checking it out today. And second, I hope after the episode, you'll consider subscribing or following or doing whatever it is that your app says that you can do. They're all kind of different. When you subscribe, you'll automatically get new episodes. You won't have to go manually searching multiple times a week to see if I've uploaded a new episode. And by the way, completely unrelated, I need to mention something. I thought I was quietly taking sips of the random things I drink while doing these podcast episodes, but apparently you guys listen at max volume with your headphones on and can hear me taking quick little sips during the episode. And most of the time I edit those out, but if I think it's quiet enough, I don't. And it's not just like a couple of you, but like a bunch of you. See, that would be one that I would normally edit out, but I didn't do it this time. And to answer your question, it's usually soda, coffee, or water. Sometimes iced tea or a Bang energy drink. Right this minute, though, it's Peet's Coffee. And it's way too late to be having coffee, but it's delicious, and who needs to sleep anyway? I'm drinking Peet's Coffee with International Delight Caramel Macchiato mixed in. Wait, is this how you become an influencer? Am I an influencer now? Well, I wouldn't be a good pretend influencer if I didn't let you know where you can find 10-Minute Murder on social media. Links are in the show notes of this episode, or you can just type it into the search and it'll pop right up. On Facebook and Instagram, I post visuals that go along with the episodes that you hear about. Nothing gross or graphic, but just enough to let you put a face to the names that you're hearing about. The story today is of a serial killer that always took lives at night, very close to midnight. He picked bike paths and parks to select his victims. He was smart, athletic, and he stalked areas in and around Anchorage, his Colt Python handgun at the ready. His murder spree only ended after an officer investigating something completely unrelated stumbled upon him while he was presumably looking for another victim. This is the story of James Dale Ritchie. James Ritchie was born in November of 1976. He grew up in Anchorage's Wonder Park neighborhood with his parents and two sisters and attended East Anchorage High School. He was tall, standing at about 6'3", and athletic. He was very good at sports and played on the same football and basketball teams with guys that would eventually go on to play professionally. In football, he was a strong offensive lineman. On the basketball court, he used his size as a power forward. A couple of those teams won a state championship with the help of Richie. Throughout his teenage years, he spent some time staying with the family of his close friends, Quincy and Bobby Thompson. Classmates said he was a happy and positive person. They would later be shocked to discover what he had become. Richie scored 1,200 on his SAT and was recruited by the West Virginia University football team in 1994, just one day following the death of his friend Quincy. And after his friend's death, he drifted away from the family that he was once so close with, the Thompson family. After just one semester away at college, Richie dropped out and returned to Alaska and became involved in drug dealing and dogfighting in 1995. By 1998, Richie had a new street name, Tiny. And this makes two killers we've talked about in the span of about a month that were large people and adopted a nickname Tiny. Over the next 7 years, Richie was arrested a bunch of times, mostly for drug-related stuff. His first arrest was in 1998. Officers following up on a drug sale investigation saw Richie in an apartment. They recognized him and greeted him by his street name. Richie pulled up his shirt, revealing a pistol in his waistband. That pistol slipped down and fell out of the bottom of his pants leg. So Tiny was apparently a bit of a clumsy thug. When searched, police found money and crack cocaine on him. He pleaded no contest for felony misconduct involving a controlled substance in the third degree. He was only given 3 years probation. In a letter he wrote to the judge in the case, Richie wrote that he lay in bed every night thinking about how I've ruined my life. Then I sit up crying, wishing I could go back to when I was in high school. I want to finish college. raise a family, and buy a house. Instead, as a felon, I'll never be able to get a good job. He was arrested for the last time in Alaska in 2005 when he was caught while committing a home invasion with plastic handcuffs and 2 handguns in his possession. He also had a wad of over $5,000 in cash in his pocket. Richie only had to serve 2 years for that. When released, he got his hands on a new gun, a Colt Python handgun. In 2013, Richie handed his precious gun over to an acquaintance and moved to Broadway, Virginia, where his parents had moved and had been living at the time. Aside from a couple of speeding tickets, Richie seemed to have turned his life around and stopped his criminal activity. Or he was just not getting caught, not sure which one. After a breakup with his girlfriend, Richie decided to move back across the country to Alaska in 2016. One of the first things he did once arriving was to reacquire that Colt Python handgun from his unnamed buddy and eventually moved to Penland Parkway Trailer Park in Anchorage. Aware that he was going through some things mentally, he sought treatment. People that knew Richie at this point said he looked young and healthy. He was friendly. He even ran into an old basketball teammate, and they briefly caught up and laughed and talked about high school memories. They hugged and went about their separate ways. But that same year, James Dale Ritchie killed 5 people. Richie committed his first 2 confirmed murders during the early morning hours of July 3rd, 2016. Using that Colt Python, he shot and killed 20-year-old Brianna Foisey and 41-year-old Jason Netter Sr. The 2 bodies were discovered together along a bike path near Ship Creek by a bicyclist at 7:45 a.m. Netter was known to police for having extensive run-ins with the law, often drug-related. Foisey was homeless and also a drug addict. Less than 1 month later, on July 29th, Richie shot 21-year-old Trevion Kendall Thompson, the son of his childhood friend Bobby Thompson, multiple times while riding his bicycle home from work. 3 girls spotted Richie from their window, lingering near the woods just prior to hearing the gunfire, and witnessed him grabbing Thompson's bicycle. Richie rode the bicycle away from the scene and took it home. The witnesses gave police enough information for a composite sketch of Richie. And many times you see police sketches and then later who they are supposed to look like, and they're not even close. The Night Stalker Richard Ramirez comes to mind. Well, this sketch was right on the money. It looks just like him. The witnesses gave a great description, and the sketch artist translated that information extremely well. The Alaska State Crime Lab confirmed that the same murder weapon used in Foisey and Netter's murders was also used in Thompson's murder. But at that point, they had a sketch and the same murder weapon. That's all they knew. A month later, at the Valley of the Moon Park, Richie shot and killed 24-year-old Kevin Turner and 25-year-old Bryant DeHusen. Turner was homeless, schizophrenic, and bipolar. DeHusen, an environmental activist in Anchorage, was doing a late-night bicycle ride on his brand-new Schwinn. The crime lab confirmed that that gun used was also the same one used in the earlier homicides. The police released an advisory notice for people to avoid isolated trails after dark, and the FBI was brought in to assist on the investigation. They didn't tell the public that they knew that the same gun was used in all of the murders, because that would run the risk of prompting the killer to get rid of it. 175 tips were phoned in, and one of them was about Richie, probably because he looked exactly like the sketch. Mandy Primo, mother to one of the victims, conducted her own investigation. After searching homeless camps and low-income neighborhoods, Primo claimed to have located and armed Richie near the Alaska Regional Hospital in October 2016. She contacted the police and reported that she had found her son's killer. She claimed to have contemplated over the phone confronting Richie directly, which they obviously advised against because he was armed and she also had a baby in the car. On November 12, 2016, an officer responding to a report of unpaid taxi cab fares pulled up alongside Richie, who was walking down a nearby street at 4:30 a.m. Since he was close, the officer asked him to stop to see if he knew anything about the taxi fares. Richie ignored him and kept walking. The officer got on his megaphone, talking to Richie, telling him to stop. At that point, Richie turned, walked briskly toward the police car, pulled out his gun, that same Colt Python, and opened fire. He hit the officer 6 times, but the officer still managed to return fire. After 7 hours of surgery and time in intensive care, the officer recovered. James Dale Ritchie died at the scene. On April 26, 2017, the Anchorage police announced that sufficient probable cause was determined to confirm that Richie was solely responsible for the 5 murders and, therefore, a confirmed serial killer. That's today's 10-Minute Murder, the brief and bingeable true crime podcast. Thanks for listening today. And by the way, there is dashcam footage of the final encounter with James Ritchie available. I'll put a link to that video on the 10-Minute Murder Facebook page. It cuts off right at the moment just before the shooting starts, so you don't have to see anyone get shot or die. So that link will be available on the Facebook page. If you have a story idea that you'd like for me to possibly look into and cover, you can email it to me, 10minutemurder@gmail.com. You can easily connect with this podcast on social media. Just click the link in the show notes of this episode, or even easier, just type 10-Minute Murder into Facebook or Instagram, and it'll pop right up. Before you go, subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening right now, and you'll never miss another episode. If you have friends that are into brief true crime stories like this one, tell them about 10-Minute Murder. Thanks for listening. Have a good night.